The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, each droplet a reminder that nature, unlike human ambition, followed predictable patterns. Marcus Chen stood motionless, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a chessboard of ambitions and failures. 6 months ago, he had been another face in the corporate crowd, overlooked and undervalued. Today, he controlled the largest merger in his company's history, commanded respect from executives twice his age, and held the career trajectories of dozens in his hands. The transformation hadn't come from working harder or being nicer. It came from understanding a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The world operates on power dynamics, not fairness. Those who recognize this fundamental reality and learn to navigate it don't just succeed, they become unstoppable. This isn't about becoming a villain or abandoning ethics. It's about developing what military strategists call situational awareness and what psychologists term strategic thinking. It's about seeing the game that everyone else is playing unconsciously and choosing to play it with intention. The strategies outlined in this document have been tested in boardrooms and battlefields, in Silicon Valley startups and ancient courts. They work because they're based on how humans actually behave, not how we wish they would behave. Part 1. The foundation of strategic thinking. Marcus remembered the exact moment his perspective shifted. It was during a team meeting where his colleague Sarah had presented his research as her own. While everyone congratulated Sarah on her brilliant insights, Marcus felt the familiar sting of being invisible. But instead of retreating into resentment or confronting her directly, something different happened. He began to study the dynamics in the room. He noticed how Sarah positioned herself physically closer to their manager, how she used specific phrases that echoed the manager's recent emails, how she had timed her presentation to coincide with the quarterly review period. Sarah wasn't just stealing credit. She was executing a sophisticated influence campaign, and it was working. That night, Marcus made a decision that would reshape his entire approach to professional and personal relationships. Instead of fighting the game, he would learn its rules. Instead of hoping for fairness, he would create his own advantages. Instead of relying on merit alone, he would master the art of strategic positioning. The first principle of Machiavellian strategy is understanding that perception shapes reality more powerfully than facts. People don't respond to what you accomplish. They respond to what they believe you've accomplished. This distinction isn't cynical. It's practical. A brilliant engineer whose contributions go unnoticed will lose to a mediocre one who knows how to showcase their work effectively. A startup with inferior technology but superior storytelling will secure funding while better products languish in obscurity. Marcus began documenting every interaction, every decision, every power dynamic he observed. He noticed that successful people shared certain behavioral patterns that had nothing to do with their technical competence. They controlled information flow. They built strategic alliances. They understood timing. They managed their image as carefully as they managed their work. The second principle emerged from watching his company's CEO navigate a hostile board meeting. While other executives presented detailed spreadsheets and technical analyses, the CEO told stories. He painted pictures of future success and past victories. He didn't just provide data, he shaped how that data was interpreted. By the end of the meeting, the same numbers that had seemed concerning an hour earlier now appeared to be signs of strategic pivoting and market positioning. This demonstrated what Marcus came to understand as the narrative principle. Reality is always interpreted through stories, and whoever controls the story controls the perception of reality. Technical accuracy matters far less than narrative coherence. A project that's 90% complete but poorly explained will seem less valuable than one that's 60% complete but brilliantly framed. Marcus tested this principle with his next project presentation. Instead of leading with technical details, he began with a story about a client's problem. He described the solution as a journey, with obstacles overcome and victories achieved. He positioned setbacks as strategic learning experiences and positioned competitors as validation of market opportunity. The same work that had previously generated polite nods now sparked enthusiastic discussion and budget approval. The third principle revealed itself through observing office politics. The people who rose fastest weren't necessarily the smartest or hardest working. They were the ones who understood alliance systems. They knew who influenced whom. They recognized the difference between formal authority and actual power. They built relationships not just with superiors, but with the assistants, analysts, and administrators who controlled access and information. Marcus began mapping these invisible networks. He discovered that the security guard knew which executives stayed late and which left early. The facilities manager understood which departments were expanding and which were contracting. The IT support team had insight into which projects were receiving additional resources. These weren't sources of gossip. They were sources of strategic intelligence. He started investing time in these relationships, not through obvious networking, but through genuine helpfulness and respect. When the facilities manager mentioned a problem with vendor coordination, Marcus volunteered to help streamline the process. When the IT team faced budget constraints, he shared cost-saving suggestions from his previous role. These investments in goodwill created an information network that proved invaluable for anticipating changes and positioning himself advantageously. The fourth principle emerged from studying how certain colleagues seemed immune to criticism while others were held to impossible standards. Marcus realized that people who were well-liked could make significant mistakes and be given second chances, while those who were merely competent would be crucified for minor errors. Likability functioned as a form of social insurance, protecting against the inevitable failures that accompany any ambitious endeavor. But likability in professional contexts wasn't about being friendly or agreeable. It was about making others feel important, competent, and valued. Marcus observed that the most influential people were skilled at asking questions that allowed others to demonstrate their expertise. They remembered personal details about colleagues' lives, they gave credit generously, and took responsibility for failures. They made others look good, which made those others want to return the favor. Marcus transformed his interaction style. Instead of trying to impress people with his knowledge, he impressed them by making them feel knowledgeable. Instead of pushing his ideas, he guided others toward discovering those ideas themselves. Instead of competing for attention, he became skilled at directing attention toward others, while positioning himself as the source of that recognition. The psychological principle underlying this approach is reciprocity. When you help someone look good, they become invested in your success because your success validates their judgment. When you make someone feel important, they associate that positive feeling with your presence. When you give someone credit, they feel obligated to ensure you receive credit in return. The fifth principle became apparent through studying negotiation dynamics. Marcus noticed that successful negotiators rarely made direct demands. Instead, they created situations where their desired outcome appeared to be the logical solution to a shared problem. They framed discussions in terms of mutual benefit rather than zero-sum competition. They understood that people are more committed to decisions they feel they've made voluntarily. Marcus applied this insight to a challenging situation with a resistant colleague who consistently undermined team initiatives. Instead of confronting the behavior directly, Marcus scheduled a private conversation where he asked for the colleague's advice on improving team dynamics. He listened carefully to the complaints and concerns, then collaboratively developed solutions that addressed those issues while achieving his original objectives. The colleague, having participated in creating the new approach, became its advocate rather than its opponent. This transformation occurred not because Marcus had changed the person's fundamental nature, but because he had aligned their interests with his own objectives. The colleague's expertise was acknowledged, their concerns were addressed, and they had ownership in the solution's success. This illustrated the ownership principle. People support what they help create. Rather than trying to convince someone to accept your idea, the more effective approach is to guide them toward developing that idea themselves. This requires patience and skill, but it creates much stronger commitment than compliance achieved through authority or persuasion. The sixth principle emerged from observing how information was used as currency within organizational hierarchies. Marcus noticed that people who controlled valuable information gained influence regardless of their formal position. A junior analyst who understood market trends could become more influential than senior managers who lacked that insight. An administrator who managed executive calendars wielded significant unofficial power through their control of access. Marcus began positioning himself as a hub of useful information. He subscribed to industry publications, attended relevant conferences, and maintained relationships with contacts at other companies. But rather than hoarding this information, he became known for sharing valuable insights with colleagues who could benefit from them. This generosity created a network of people who regularly sought his perspective and shared information in return. The key insight was that information's value isn't just in possessing it, but in being recognized as a reliable source of it. When people consistently receive valuable information from you, they begin to see you as an expert and advisor. This perception creates opportunities for influence that extend far beyond the specific information being shared. Marcus also learned to be strategic about information timing. Sharing insights just before they became widely known positioned him as prescient. Providing advance warning about challenges allowed colleagues to prepare effectively, creating gratitude and debt. Understanding when to share information and when to withhold it became as important as the information itself. The seventh principle revealed itself through studying how successful people manage their energy and attention. Marcus observed that peak performers weren't necessarily more talented or motivated than their peers. They were more strategic about where they focused their efforts. They understood the difference between being busy and being effective. They recognized that some activities generated disproportionate returns, while others consumed time without creating meaningful progress. This led to the development of what Marcus called leverage thinking. Every action could be evaluated based on its potential to create multiple benefits or solve multiple problems simultaneously. A well-crafted email could simultaneously update stakeholders, demonstrate competence, and position the sender for future opportunities. A strategic meeting attendance could provide valuable information, build important relationships, and increase visibility with key decision-makers. Marcus began applying leverage analysis to his daily activities. Instead of accepting meeting invitations indiscriminately, he evaluated each one based on its potential for creating strategic value. Instead of responding to every request immediately, he considered how his response could create additional opportunities. Instead of working on tasks in isolation, he looked for ways to connect his efforts to broader organizational priorities. This strategic approach to time and energy management created a compound effect. Each leveraged action generated multiple benefits, which created opportunities for additional leveraged actions. Within months, Marcus found himself involved in high-visibility projects, connected to influential networks, and recognized as someone who got important things done efficiently. The eighth principle emerged from studying how perception management worked in practice. Marcus realized that people's opinions were formed not just by major achievements or failures, but by countless small interactions and observations. The colleague who always arrived early was perceived as dedicated. The one who dressed slightly better than required was seen as promotion-ready. The person who spoke confidently in meetings was considered leadership material, regardless of the actual quality of their ideas. This wasn't about superficiality or manipulation. It was about understanding that humans form judgments quickly based on available evidence, and that managing that evidence was a legitimate aspect of professional effectiveness. Just as a company invests in branding and marketing, individuals needed to invest in their professional image and reputation. Marcus began paying attention to what he called reputation signals. He ensured his workspace reflected organization and competence. He spoke with authority on subjects where he had expertise and asked thoughtful questions in areas where he didn't. He volunteered for visible assignments and declined opportunities that might damage his reputation. He associated himself with successful projects, and distanced himself from failing ones, without abandoning his responsibilities. The key insight was that reputation is built through consistency over time. Small positive impressions accumulated to create a powerful overall perception. People began to think of Marcus as reliable, competent, and strategic. This reputation created opportunities that wouldn't have been available based on his work quality alone. The ninth principle came from observing how timing affected the success or failure of identical actions. Marcus noticed that the same idea presented during a crisis received very different reception than when presented during stable periods. Proposals for change were more likely to be accepted when linked to external pressures or opportunities. People were more willing to consider new approaches when their current methods were demonstrably insufficient. This led to understanding the concept of strategic patience. Rather than pushing for immediate adoption of ideas, Marcus learned to wait for optimal timing. He would plant seeds of concepts during casual conversations, then wait for circumstances that made those concepts appear obviously necessary. When market conditions shifted or organizational priorities changed, he was ready with solutions that seemed perfectly tailored to the new reality. Marcus also learned to create favorable timing rather than simply waiting for it. By anticipating future challenges and preparing responses in advance, he could appear remarkably prescient when those challenges materialized. By building consensus gradually rather than seeking immediate approval, he could ensure stronger support when formal decisions needed to be made. The 10th principle synthesized all the previous insights into what Marcus termed systematic positioning. This involved continuously working to improve his strategic position within organizational and professional networks. Rather than focusing solely on immediate tasks, he allocated time and energy to activities that would create future opportunities and advantages. Systematic positioning meant building diverse skills that complemented each other. Technical expertise combined with communication skills created opportunities that neither capability offered alone. Industry knowledge combined with relationship management created advisory possibilities. Project management combined with strategic thinking created leadership potential. It also meant cultivating multiple sources of value within his organization. Marcus ensured he wasn't solely dependent on his immediate manager's opinion or his current department's success. He built relationships across functions, contributed to cross-departmental initiatives, and developed expertise that was valuable to various parts of the organization. This diversification protected him from organizational changes while creating multiple paths for advancement. Part 2. Advanced Implementation Techniques. 6 months into applying these principles, Marcus faced his first major test. The company announced a significant reorganization that would eliminate several positions, including potentially his own. While his colleagues panicked or resigned themselves to fate, Marcus saw opportunity where others saw crisis. The same strategic principles that had improved his day-to-day effectiveness now became tools for navigating organizational turbulence. The reorganization created what military strategists call fluid situations, where normal rules and expectations are temporarily suspended. During such periods, bold actions that would seem inappropriate under normal circumstances, Marcus recognized that the next few weeks would reshape the organization's power structure, and positioning himself advantageously during this transition would have lasting benefits. His first move involved information gathering. While others focused on protecting their current positions, Marcus invested time in understanding the reorganization's strategic logic. He studied the new organizational chart, researched the backgrounds of incoming leaders, and analyzed which functions were being emphasized versus de-emphasized. This research revealed that the company was pivoting toward data-driven decision-making, which aligned perfectly with capabilities Marcus had been developing. Rather than waiting for official announcements about his role, Marcus proactively scheduled conversations with key stakeholders to understand their priorities during the transition. These weren't job interviews disguised as meetings. They were strategic consultations where Marcus offered insights about operational challenges and potential solutions. Each conversation reinforced his value while gathering intelligence about decision-making processes and criteria. The positioning during chaos principle became clear. When systems are unstable, people gravitate toward sources of stability and clarity. By remaining calm, well-informed, and solution-focused while others were reactive and emotional, Marcus positioned himself as a stabilizing influence that leaders would want to retain and promote. His second strategic move involved alliance management during the transition. Marcus had spent months building relationships across departments, and these investments now proved invaluable. The facilities manager mentioned that certain executives were spending more time in the office, suggesting increased responsibility. The IT coordinator shared details about which systems were being integrated or discontinued, indicating departmental priorities. The executive assistant network provided insights into meeting schedules and decision timelines. More importantly, Marcus had earned goodwill from colleagues who were now competing for limited positions. Instead of viewing them as competitors, he found ways to help them succeed while positioning himself as someone valuable to their success. When a colleague needed data for a critical presentation, Marcus provided it efficiently. When another was struggling with stakeholder management, Marcus offered strategic advice. These actions created advocates rather than enemies, during a period when mutual support was crucial. The network activation principle emerged. Relationships built during calm periods become most valuable during turbulent ones. People remember who helped them during difficult times, and they look for ways to reciprocate when they gain influence or security. Marcus's third strategic initiative involved redefining his role proactively, rather than waiting for others to define it for him. He identified a gap in the reorganization plan. Nobody was explicitly responsible for ensuring smooth integration between departments that were being merged. Instead of asking for permission to address this gap, Marcus began organizing cross-functional coordination meetings and developing integration protocols. This approach demonstrated what Marcus called constructive assumption of responsibility. Rather than waiting to be assigned tasks, he identified critical needs and began addressing them competently. This positioned him as someone who took initiative and delivered value during uncertain times, exactly the kind of person organizations want to retain and promote. The meetings Marcus organized served multiple strategic purposes. They provided value to participants by solving real coordination problems. They positioned Marcus as a leader capable of managing complex, cross-functional initiatives. They created visibility with executives who attended to understand integration challenges. They demonstrated Marcus's understanding of the organization's strategic direction and his ability to execute operational improvements. Within 3 weeks, what had begun as an unofficial coordination role became a formal position with expanded responsibilities and compensation. The reorganization that had threatened Marcus's job security instead became the catalyst for his most significant career advancement. The fourth advanced technique involved what Marcus termed strategic narrative creation. During periods of change, people seek explanations for what's happening and predictions about what will happen next. Whoever provides the most compelling and coherent narrative gains influence over how events are interpreted and what actions are taken in response. Marcus began developing and sharing his analysis of the reorganization's strategic logic. He explained how the changes positioned the company to capitalize on market trends. He connected individual role changes to broader competitive advantages. He helped colleagues understand how their skills and experience aligned with the organization's new direction. This wasn't speculation. It was strategic communication that helped people make sense of uncertainty. The power of narrative became evident when Marcus's explanations began being repeated in other meetings and referenced in official communications. His interpretation of events became the accepted interpretation, which gave him influence over how future decisions were framed and evaluated. People began seeking his perspective on other organizational changes because his previous analysis had proven insightful. The fifth technique focused on what Marcus called competence demonstration under pressure. While many people's performance declined during the stressful reorganization period, Marcus maintained and even improved his effectiveness. He helped resolve conflicts that arose from changing reporting relationships. He remained calm and solution-focused while others became reactive and emotional. This consistency under pressure served as powerful evidence of leadership potential. Organizations need people who can perform effectively during difficult periods, and Marcus's behavior during the reorganization provided concrete proof of that capability. The projects he completed during this time received additional attention because they demonstrated competence when competence was most valuable. Marcus also learned to document and communicate his contributions during this period. He created brief status reports that highlighted progress despite challenges. He shared lessons learned from managing projects during organizational transition. He positioned his work as examples of effective change management rather than simply completing assigned tasks. The sixth advanced technique involved opportunity identification during disruption. While others focused on minimizing losses during the reorganization, Marcus looked for ways to create gains. He identified capabilities that would be valuable in the new organizational structure and developed them proactively. He recognized which relationships would become more important and invested additional effort in strengthening them. He anticipated future challenges and began developing solutions before they became urgent. This forward-looking approach distinguished Marcus from colleagues who were primarily reactive. While others were adapting to changes that had already occurred, Marcus was preparing for changes that hadn't yet been announced. This positioning created additional opportunities as leaders recognized his strategic thinking and planning capabilities. One specific opportunity Marcus identified involved the integration of newly acquired technology systems. While technical experts focused on the mechanical aspects of integration, Marcus recognized that user adoption would be the critical success factor. He began developing training materials and change management processes that would smooth the transition. When implementation challenges emerged, Marcus was ready with solutions that saved time and reduced frustration. The seventh technique centered on influence without authority during periods when formal authority structures were unclear or changing. Marcus couldn't rely on his job title or position in the organizational chart to get things done, so he had to develop other sources of influence. These skills proved valuable not just during the transition, but in his subsequent roles where cross-functional collaboration was essential. Marcus learned to influence through expertise by becoming the person others consulted for strategic advice. He influenced through relationships by maintaining connections with people across the organization. He influenced through reciprocity by consistently helping others achieve their objectives. He influenced through timing by providing solutions when they were most needed. The combination of these influence sources created what Marcus called gravitational influence. People were drawn to work with him not because they had to, but because collaboration with Marcus consistently produced better results than working alone. This attraction-based influence proved more durable and effective than authority-based influence because it was based on value creation rather than hierarchical compliance. Part 3. Mastery and Sustained Excellence. 18 months after beginning his transformation, Marcus faced a challenge that would test every principle and technique he had developed. The company's largest client was threatening to terminate their contract due to service quality concerns, potentially costing millions in revenue and dozens of jobs. The situation was complex, involving technical issues, relationship management problems. Previous attempts to address the client's concerns had failed, and senior leadership was considering dramatic measures including personnel changes and service restructuring. Marcus wasn't directly responsible for the client relationship, but he recognized that the crisis created an opportunity to demonstrate advanced strategic thinking and leadership capability. Rather than avoiding a difficult situation that could damage his reputation if he failed, Marcus volunteered to lead a comprehensive solution development effort. This decision reflected his evolution from someone who avoided risk to someone who strategically embraced high-visibility challenges. The strategic risk assumption principle had become central to Marcus's approach. He understood that significant advancement required taking on challenges that others avoided. But this wasn't reckless risk-taking. It was calculated engagement with situations where the potential rewards justified the risks and where his accumulated capabilities gave him a reasonable chance of success. Marcus's first step involved comprehensive stakeholder analysis that went far beyond the obvious players. He mapped not just the client's decision-makers, but their internal pressures, competitive concerns, and success metrics. He analyzed his own organization's constraints, capabilities, and political dynamics. He identified external factors, including market conditions and regulatory changes that might affect both parties' interests. This analysis revealed that the apparent service quality issues were symptoms of deeper strategic misalignment. The client's business had evolved since the original contract was signed, but the service delivery model hadn't adapted accordingly. Both parties were frustrated because they were optimizing for different objectives without recognizing the disconnect. The insight led Marcus to reframe the challenge from how do we fix service delivery problems to how do we realign our service model with the client's evolved business strategy. This reframing opened possibilities that hadn't been visible when the situation was viewed purely as an operational problem. Marcus's second strategic move involved building a cross-functional team that included representatives from every department that touched the client relationship. Rather than leading this team hierarchically, he facilitated a collaborative problem-solving process that drew on everyone's expertise while maintaining focus on strategic objectives. The team composition itself was strategic. By including people from departments that weren't directly involved in service delivery, Marcus gained access to capabilities and perspectives that previous improvement efforts had missed. The marketing team understood client industry trends. The product development team had insights into technical capabilities that weren't being utilized. The finance team had data about service profitability that revealed optimization opportunities. Marcus's role as team facilitator rather than traditional project manager reflected his understanding of leadership through orchestration. Instead of trying to have all the best ideas himself, he created conditions for others to contribute their best thinking. Instead of managing through authority, he coordinated through alignment around shared objectives. Instead of taking credit for solutions, he ensured that everyone who contributed received recognition. The third strategic initiative involved what Marcus termed comprehensive solution architecture. Rather than addressing the client's immediate concerns in isolation, he developed a holistic approach that solved multiple problems simultaneously while creating additional value for both parties. The solution included operational improvements that addressed the immediate service quality concerns, but it also included strategic enhancements that helped the client achieve their broader business objectives more effectively. And it included new service capabilities that opened additional revenue opportunities while differentiating the company from competitors. This comprehensive approach required more initial effort than simply fixing the immediate problems. The client was satisfied not just with problem resolution, but with gaining a strategic partner who understood their business and contributed to their success. The company not only retained the contract, but expanded the relationship and established a model for similar improvements with other clients. The fourth technique involved crisis transformation into competitive advantage. Marcus recognized that the crisis had created an opportunity to implement improvements that would have been difficult to justify under normal circumstances. The urgency of potential contract loss provided justification for resource allocation and process changes that might otherwise have faced resistance. Marcus documented every aspect of the solution development process, creating a methodology that could be applied to other challenging client relationships. He developed training materials that helped other teams apply similar collaborative problem-solving approaches. He created performance metrics that would provide early warning of similar misalignment issues with other clients. These efforts transformed a reactive crisis response into a proactive capability improvement that benefited the entire organization. The company gained not just a satisfied client, but enhanced competencies for managing complex relationships and solving strategic problems collaboratively. The fifth advanced technique focused on institutional knowledge creation. Marcus recognized that his individual success needed to be translated into organizational capabilities if it was going to create lasting value and position him for continued advancement. This meant developing systems, processes, and training that could be used by others to achieve similar results. Marcus began documenting the strategic principles and techniques he had developed, creating frameworks that could be taught and applied consistently. He conducted workshops for other teams facing similar challenges. He mentored colleagues who were developing their own strategic thinking capabilities. He contributed to company-wide initiatives for improving cross-functional collaboration and client relationship management. This knowledge transfer served multiple strategic purposes. It demonstrated Marcus's value as a capability developer, not just an individual performer. It created advocates throughout the organization who had benefited from his expertise. It positioned him as someone who could scale impact beyond his direct responsibilities. It established his reputation as a strategic thinker whose insights could be applied broadly. The sixth technique involved strategic positioning for future opportunities. Marcus recognized that his current success needed to be leveraged to create access to even more significant challenges and advancement possibilities. This required understanding how his demonstrated capabilities aligned with the organization's strategic direction and positioning himself for roles that would become available as the company grew and evolved. Marcus began seeking exposure to senior leadership through his work on the Client Recovery Project. He volunteered for strategic planning initiatives that would give him insight into the company's long-term direction. He built relationships with board members and investors who visited the company. He started speaking at industry conferences about the problem-solving methodologies he had developed. These activities expanded Marcus's visibility beyond his immediate organization while establishing his expertise in strategic problem-solving and relationship management. They created opportunities for advancement within the company and options for advancement elsewhere if internal opportunities didn't materialize. The seventh technique focused on what Marcus called sustainable excellence maintenance. He had learned that achieving success was less difficult than maintaining it over time while continuing to grow and improve. This required developing systems for continuous learning, relationship maintenance, and capability development. Marcus established personal practices for staying current with industry trends, developing new skills, and maintaining his professional network. He created feedback systems that helped him identify areas for improvement before they became problems. He allocated time for strategic thinking and planning, rather than being completely consumed by operational demands. He also developed what he termed success sustainability mindset. This involved recognizing that each achievement created new expectations and responsibilities. Success brought increased visibility, which meant mistakes would have greater consequences. Achievement in one area created opportunities in new areas that might require different capabilities. Growth created the need for delegation and leadership skills that differed from individual performance skills. The eighth technique involved strategic value chain positioning. Marcus understood that his individual success was connected to the success of his team, department, and organization. By contributing to their success, he ensured his own continued advancement. Marcus began looking for opportunities to improve organizational effectiveness beyond his direct responsibilities. He identified process improvements that would benefit multiple departments. He developed talent development initiatives that would improve overall capability. He contributed to culture improvement efforts that enhanced collaboration and innovation. This broader contribution approach positioned Marcus as someone who thought strategically about organizational success, not just personal advancement. It demonstrated leadership potential and created relationships with executives who were responsible for organizational performance. It established Marcus as someone who could be trusted with increasing responsibility because his actions consistently benefited the broader organization. The ninth technique focused on legacy creation and reputation protection. Marcus recognized that his accumulated success had created a reputation that needed to be protected and enhanced through continued excellent performance and strategic contribution. This meant being selective about the projects he took on, ensuring that each engagement would enhance rather than diminish his reputation. Marcus developed criteria for evaluating opportunities based on their potential for creating value, developing his capabilities and enhancing his reputation. He learned to decline opportunities that seemed attractive in the short term but might create long-term problems. He invested time in ensuring that his past successes were well documented and understood by people who might influence his future opportunities. He also began thinking about how his career development could create value for others. Marcus started mentoring high-potential colleagues, sharing the strategic thinking approaches he had developed. He contributed to industry publications and conferences, establishing thought leadership in strategic problem-solving and relationship management. He participated in community and professional organizations that aligned with his values and expertise. The 10th and final technique involved systematic continuous evolution. Marcus understood that the strategic environment would continue changing, and his approaches needed to evolve accordingly. The principles he had learned would remain relevant, but their application would need to be adapted to new challenges, opportunities, and contexts. Marcus established practices for staying ahead of changes that might affect his industry, organization, and career trajectory. He developed relationships with people in different industries and roles who could provide diverse perspectives on strategic challenges and opportunities. He committed to continuous learning and experimentation that would enhance his strategic thinking and execution capabilities. He also recognized that his strategic development was part of a larger life design process. Career success needed to be integrated with personal fulfillment, relationship quality, and contribution to community and society. The same strategic thinking principles that had transformed his professional effectiveness could be applied to creating a life that was both successful and meaningful. Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him from frustrated obscurity to strategic influence, and recognized that the transformation was really about developing clarity about how the world actually works, and then aligning his actions with that reality. The techniques weren't manipulative tricks. They were sophisticated applications of psychological and social principles that successful people understand intuitively or learn through experience. The rain had stopped, and the city lights created a different pattern against the darkening sky. Marcus understood that his transformation was complete in one sense. He now possessed the strategic thinking capabilities and implementation skills that would serve him throughout his career. But in another sense, it was just beginning. Each new challenge would require applying these principles in new ways, and each success would create opportunities for even greater contributions. The document concluded not with a summary of techniques, but with recognition that strategic excellence is ultimately about serving something larger than immediate self-interest. The most successful and fulfilled people are those who use their strategic capabilities to create value for others, while building lives that reflect their deepest values and highest aspirations. True mastery involves understanding that power and influence are tools for contribution, not ends in themselves. Marcus turned from the window and walked back to his desk where tomorrow's challenges waited. But now he approached them not with anxiety or hope, but with the calm confidence that comes from understanding how to navigate complexity and create favorable outcomes through strategic thinking and skillful action. The transformation was complete, but the application would continue evolving throughout his career and life. This document represents a comprehensive exploration of strategic thinking and influence development based on principles that have proven effective across diverse contexts and challenges. The approaches described require ethical application and should be used to create value for all stakeholders involved in any situation. Strategic excellence serves its highest purpose when applied with wisdom, integrity, and commitment to positive contribution.